Hello, and welcome back to a joint episode of Real Seekers and Faith Unaltered. I'm your host, Dale, the Real Seeker, and I'm joined by that no good heretic, my co-host, David Russell. Hey, David, how's it
Hey,
going?
what's up, buddy? How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Welcome back. And today we have a special treat. We have a returning guest, Dr. Helmut Felzmann, and he's been on my Real Seekers podcast before, specifically talking about his take on the Shroud of Turin. But during that conversation, we kind of raised various issues regarding kind of liberal versus conservative Christianity. You know, the notion of God. What was Jesus's primary message? How do you make sense of hell and all these kinds of topics? So I wanted to bring Helmut back to kind of discuss his notions of Christianity and how does that relate to someone like David and myself. So yeah. With that said, Helmut, this is your first time on the Faith Unaltered podcast. Do you kind of want to introduce yourself to the audience and a little bit about your background and that sort of thing?
Okay. So hello and thank you very much for your invitation. Well, as you might notice, I'm not an American. I'm not an English-speaking person. I'm a German. And my native language is German, so please be patient with me if I don't find the most specific word for this specific issue, but I will try my very best. So, who am I? I'm 71 years old. I'm living here with my family, family now with my wife, and I have two kids, two adult daughters here near Munich. And I came to the Shroud already in the 1970s. At this time, I was I would say a strong evangelical Christian. I was a part of a group that came over from America, from the there was this Jesus movement, and they just catched me on the main square in Munich, like a mature apple. And so I gave my life to Jesus and became a born-again Christian. And I baptized in the Isar River, in the middle of Munich. And we went every week to the main square in Marienplatz in Munich and preaching the gospel, telling the people that Jesus loves them and has died for their sin and is resurrected and so on. It was a wonderful time for me. I do not regret anything. I had very a good remembrance and made experiences that were very important for my life. Yes. After about 10 years, even before, the things grow a little more difficult, and I'm a critical person, and I want go deep into things to find out what they are. And so critical questions were not welcome. Afflictions from the devil and so on. And it didn't help me also. It didn't help me in my deepest problems. I always knew that I'm missing basic confidence. And very later on, I found out why, because I have brought to an infant home just after my birth for 4.5 years. Catholic nuns, so no connection to the mother, and it was after the war. It was 1953, so my parents were struggling in a destroyed country, and that's it happened. So later, I was very successful in my life. I'm a business administrator, and I was a president of a software company in my area, a market leader in Europe even. It was a gigantic success. But I became severe body problems, stomach ulcer, bleeding twice in hospital because I fainted because of so much blood loss. It was during this evangelical time, it was prayed for me, but the Holy Spirit came as hands were laid on people and they fell down, and me included, but it didn't help. So I was looking for the things that truly help, and I attended a lot of self-awareness groups and spiritual groups, something like this, which were not really conservative Christian things. I had a lot of direct experiences with God, with Jesus, you can say, unbelievable things. So I am a mystic, I could say. And there was this phase of healing of this trauma. Healing of such deep trauma is always, the foundation for healing is always love. Yeah? And you need to experience a love on a very deep level. Yeah? The love must go deeper than the hurt. And as the hurt was very much on the beginning of my life, so the hurt was very, very deep. So I had to experience a very, very deep love. And this was at the time Jesus. I see myself still as a disciple of Jesus. But I'm not so sure whether I'm still a Christian. At least not in the meaning of this antique creed. I'm a very scientifically thinking person. I was an assistant professor at the University of Munich in the beginning 70s. Business administration, operations research. So facts. But on the other side, I experienced unbelievable spiritual things. So sometimes I think God is joking sometimes.
Okay. He has a sense of humor.
So at the end of, as it was 1999, I wanted to write a book about what I have experienced and about also the Shroud of Turin as a kind of proof for the truth of my faith, for the truth that Jesus supernaturally resurrected. But during this time, I was in a bookstore, a big bookstore, and there I found a book that just arrived, that just was published. Jesus starb nicht am Kreuz, die Botschaft des Turiner Grabtuchs. So Jesus didn't die on the cross, the message of the Turin shroud. And I was angry. I thought, what a heresy. How can somebody write such a nonsense? But as I wanted to write a book that included also the Turin shroud, I was ready to buy this book anyhow. So I did it because I thought, okay, even if you don't like what you wrote, you should at least know what other people are thinking about the Turin shroud. And should not be closed-minded, but just look, you will see. So I read it, and the book gave me a sleepless night, because for me it was clear that facts clearly speak for a living body under the shroud. For forensic scientists, opinions, hard facts. And for me, it was instantly clear that the signs for life are so clear that I cannot neglect it. And I thought, my dear, then this shroud, this cloth, ancient cloth questions 2,000 years of Christian theology. Wow. And I said, okay, what is with my salvation? Yeah? So Paul has connected the whole salvation to a real death, a sacrificial death of Jesus, and a real supernatural resurrection. If this has not taken place in a hard sense, it's all made up. This whole faith is somehow made up.
So you're saying, just to clarify, you're saying Paul invented the story of the crucifixion and all of that, right?
No. The crucifixion, of course, was real. And also the suffering, all was real. It was also real that Jesus died on the cross, but it was only believed that he died. So he died, he was dead according to the standards of antiquity, but not according to modern standards. And it is up to us today that we can have a deeper look, and then the people 2,000 years ago, we have science with methods, and we have forensic science, and they can decide if you have a certain situation, whether the person is dead or not. That was not so distinct, not so precise 2,000 years ago. So I think that the apostles, they thought he was dead. And then when he visited them, they were shocked, as it is written in Luke. Yeah? And Jesus said to them, no, I am not a ghost. It's me. It's me. Just touch me. Yeah? Give me something to eat. And he ate fish in front of the eyes of his disciples. And he said, no, it's not an illusion. It's real. It's me. It's my body. It's real. So I'm absolutely sure that for the disciples, this was a miracle. Very clear. And also this encounters with resurrected, also with Jesus after the crucifixion, have a real historical background. It happens. Whether it happens precisely in each detail as it's written, maybe another thing. But the core event, the core of the thing is historical. I'm absolutely sure. Okay. So that's so for me it is the image of God and the image of Jesus has changed over time. So well, I can say I'm a disciple of Jesus, but what does this mean? Jesus for me is a symbol of love and of truth. And he must have had a deep spiritual development, which led to him that he found God in him in a very deep way, so that he could say, who sees me sees the Father. It is a matter of who we think we are. Yeah? Are we just a body? Are we just matter? Yeah? A scent, piece of scent? Or are we a spiritual being? And are we children of God in our body? Are we eternal or not? Or we are just a body? If we identify ourselves with our body and with the material world, we cannot have any idea of God. Now, where is God? You cannot find it under the microscope. It is not. It cannot be seen. It's a material world. So, where you can find God is within yourself. That's what the mystic says. They say, okay, you will find God in us. So Christ, I think that's a very good word, but it's used a little bit and different in the Bible. Christ is not a separated entity in myself, so that I can say, he is me and he is Christ. So two persons in the body.
Okay.
No, Christ for me is my real self.
Okay.
Which is godly. Yeah? Which is godly. And to find Christ means to see yourself. So if you look for God, if you are searching for God, in reality, you are searching for yourself, for your true self, for your true spiritual self. Yeah.
Okay.
And it can happen. It can be that you don't know this, and you think that God is somewhere outside. Yes, and you have to find him somewhere outside, but you can't find him outside.
Fair enough.
Because God is not there. God is within you. It's
so
you and within me and within everybody else. Yeah.
Okay.
But it is sometimes it is this is very much hidden.
Okay, so I want to kind of come back on. I want to start with this notion of God. So I'm glad that you kind of ended off your introduction with that difference between traditional Christianity and your notion of God as it happens now. God. So for you, God is not a separate being that exists out there externally. It's kind of this within us, like you are God, you believe you're God. So
no.
in a way, all human beings.
We must look very precisely. So I am not God the Father because I am not my own cause. I didn't create me. Funny, no. God created me. I think this concept of Christianity, of this God in three persons, is not so bad. God the Father is the Creator. God the Son, which we are. Yeah, that's a problem in Christianity, that they have projected everything to this Jesus, to Yeshua, as he really was called. Yeah, and he is the second person of God, and we are, as Paul said, some adopted. So second category, no. So we all are on a spiritual level. We all are because the effect of God, but there is no place where the Father ends and the Son begins. So there is a unity.
Okay.
This does not mean that I am the creator of everything. No, I'm the Son of God. And you too, of course.
Yeah, all human. Okay, so David, I'm going to bring you in at this point. So if you're still here, David. Yep. So hearing Helmut's view, just for we're going to look at the Christianity stuff afterwards, but just in terms of the concept of God to start off with, you've heard what Helmut's view is. What are your kind of thoughts on the notion of God that he has, and if you have any follow-up questions as well?
Well, I don't have any follow-up. It's kind of hard to pinpoint your view, Helmet, like honestly. So I would be interested to see whatever slides you've got and stuff like that. But um as far as the notion that, we're an effect of God, I mean, I've seen that historically done, and I've seen that in certain areas of Christianity. Obviously, we all believe we're sons of God. So at this point, I guess there could be a language barrier issue here, and maybe
Yes,
we're not understanding you.
yes,
And I want a little bit more of what you actually believe on that notion. A very compelling story. We all go through suffering, at times.
of course.
And I think it's good that I hate using this word that God is hidden, because I don't think he really is hidden. I think he is very active in the world. Uh, whether it's the restraint of certain evils, or anything else. But I think that if he was the way we want him to be, we would use him more, or we try to use him more as a divine butler. And then I think the relationship aspect with ourselves and God would the dynamic of a relationship would change, because I kind of love the example of the woman and Bill Gates, right? So it was told to me a long time ago that, if a woman knew that she was dating a billionaire like Bill Gates, you know, what would the dynamic of the relationship be? Would she be going out with him because he makes a lot of money, he could take care of her, or would the relationship be of genuine love? And I do love the fact that you said you want to overtake suffering and pain and hurt, and that healing love is part of healing. That's very true. I think that's very good stuff. Uh, Overcome evil with good, right? I mean, that's what Jesus said, you know, overcome evil with good. And I think that's a true thing. I really do. And I think that the love can also, because it is the ultimate ethic, we overcome our hurt and our pain with an abundance of love and grace and mercy, and charity even towards others. I think that's a must. If we're going to be Christians, we have to love other people. We have to show them that we care, and not.
May I interrupt
Yeah.
you a little?
No, go for it. Go for it.
Okay. Uh, I think you, it doesn't work very well to try to overcome hurt by good. Um, that's my experience, and I can say since about 15 years I'm a trauma therapist. So I'm working with people that have deep traumas, and I really like this work, and I know what I'm talking about. So um, what really heals is, on a spiritual level, uh, I just say it as it is, my holiness. So this seems like how do you say, like an insult, perhaps. But what do I do? What do I mean? God has created us holy and without um, defects, I think, on a spiritual level. And we are not, again, we are not a separate entity. We are something like an expansion of God on a spiritual level. So we have the same characteristics as He has
It's kind of like
in our real essence.
Okay, so you
So
don't
by nature,
distinguish.
by nature. So as because we are created that way by Him. It's not our uh, merits. Yeah?
Well, of
It's
course.
not our merits. It is yeah, because we are as we are, and
Yeah,
so the healing process is a process of getting to know oneself, getting to know its
yeah.
holiness,
Yeah,
Can you suppose that
that's
we
where I
are
think.
real love, that we are real love, and we are eternal
Yeah, go ahead.
in
Yeah.
the essence of what we really are as God's
Right.
creations, not as the product of our ego doings.
Yeah, see, I have a big problem with that though. I do think that I do think that we reflect God's image. I don't think that we're necessarily part of God. I think that's clear through the scriptures. And when I say that, getting to know oneself and stuff like that, I think that's good. I mean, I think we do have to get to know ourselves a little better at some
David,
point, but we
David,
are ourselves as well.
yes, I have to interrupt you again. Uh, it is, you have to look very precisely. And I didn't say that we are a part of God. I didn't say this. I said we are a kind of expansion of God.
Okay.
That's a difference.
Okay, what's the essence person distinction there?
Pardon?
What is the essence and person distinction on your view? Like there obviously is a separating point because we aren't God, right? So but you say that we're an expansion of God. So what are we, like an appendage? I mean, I'm just trying to understand, to wrap my mind around what you're saying.
Expansion means from the same substance.
So we are part of his essence. So we are part of God at that point, right?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Uh,
So it's something that can exist as, I guess, as the Trinity, an example, for an example. They exist as one being, yet they're separate persons. We exist
no, no,
as, is it
no,
like that?
no. Uh,
Yeah.
and the other thing is we have to discern the perspective from what we are talking about. So there are two different perspectives. The one perspective is the eternal spiritual perspective, and we are on this level. We are a kind of part of God's spirit. Our spirit is a kind of also God's spirit is in us, and we are not um, separated from Him. There is a unity. Yeah? That's the spiritual level. The day-to-day level is that we, of course, are separated to one another. So I am a German, you are an American. I am in this body, you are in that body. You have another personalities, and I have, and so on. So there are many things we don't agree. Few things perhaps we agree. So on a daily level, we see us separated. And on the religious level, most people see them separated from God. So here is the Almighty, Holy God, and here are we, the sinners, separated from God. So separation as a reality from the perspective also from God. Yeah. So God sees us as separated. This is, I think, the view of traditional religion, of conservative religion.
So
This is sin because we are sinners.
okay, so I have two questions I think that might help. So the first one, obviously, like under conservative Christianity, we separate God and us. Like on a spiritual level, we don't have the divine nature. We're not worthy of worship. And I think throughout the Old Testament, it's clear only He is worthy of worship. So I'm just kind of curious. Do you see that there's a distinction on a spiritual level in that only God is worthy of worship or ascribing that worth to, or are we? Can you worship our spirit because that's part of God?
I think it depends on what attitude you speak of worship.
Okay.
Not attitude is not the right word. I just try to find it out. I just look it up. It's the right word. Yeah, attitude is not too bad. Okay, let's take attitude. Okay. I think that we are somehow afraid, and our biggest fear is concerning our greatness.
Okay.
Also real greatness. There is this real greatness, and the was sagt man? Just a moment.
No problem.
Delusion of grandeur, megalomania,
Yeah.
of the ego. Yeah. So
Yeah.
the ego who thinks to be God. Yeah. Maybe Hitler was such a guy.
Yeah.
Or Putin today, but whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. Delusion. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
American.
You think higher of yourself.
Let's not talk about political issues. So, on this perspective, that you say, okay, we should be humble before God. Yes, that's because we don't deserve to be great. I think this is not what Jesus wanted. He said, don't put your light under the, damn is the word, bushel. Hide one's light under a bushel. Yeah, okay.
Oh.
So Jesus said, don't hide your light under the bushel.
The bush, yeah, the bush.
So you know what I mean. So
yeah.
That's what Jesus said. He said, my disciples will be able to do greater things, even than I did. And why? Because the ego is so fantastic? No, because of how they are created from God, the inner essence. How great our inner essence is. We are pure love. If we would not be pure love, it would not hurt us so much if there is no love. So a computer is not love. He has no hurt.
Yeah.
So we are not computers. And in our essence, we are pure love, as God is pure love. And love is always unconditional.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not pure love.
Believe it or not, I think from a conservative, even from a conservative Christian, I think we agree with that, right? Because man was very good when God created human beings. We are made in the image of God as a representative, and that is good. Our essence is good. But there is one thing that you also admitted. You admitted on one level, all human beings are sinners, though. So I'm kind of curious as to what, and after you give your take on what does it mean for us to be a sinner? There's something that's contaminated about humans, and I want to get David's take.
Very, very good question.
Yeah.
So, for me, sin or to be sinners is a kind of to forget who we really are.
Okay.
So then we sin. We automatically sin because, first of all, this is blasphemy. In the deepest sense, this is blasphemy. We seem to lose our dignity because our dignity depends on how we are created, of our essence, and not on our body and the career we make and money we have and how nice we are. That's not our dignity. Our dignity is because we are children of God in our essence. But we have forgotten it. That's the problem. And we have to remember it. And Jesus has remembered it. And therefore, he could say, if you see me, you see the Father.
Okay.
But also other people who have remembered it, I think no man can remember it 100%. We are always on a spiritual path. Yeah? But there are, so I am a fan of Francis from Assisi. Yeah, I was twice in Assisi, and I think
Yes.
he remembered a lot. And he was unbelievable. He went to, at the time, it was in the 13th century, he went to Egypt. There was crusaders fighting against the Muslims, and he wanted to make peace, to help to that peace comes. And he spoke with both. He spoke with the Muslim leader and with the Christian leader. And he was in a better connection with the Muslim leader than with the Christian leader. So the Muslim wanted peace, the Christian says no. Yeah? God wants it. So the Pope said God wants it. So this was or for instance, Mandela, Nelson Mandela. Yeah, he was in prison for many years, yeah? And he was still a loving person, forgiving person. So he knew his essence.
Okay, so that's very interesting then. So for you, the sin, it's not even necessarily about sinful actions. Those are maybe just an outgrowth. But the real sin, the root of sin, is for ignorance of yourself as being on a spiritual level God in some sense, being a part of God. Mm-hmm. Now, David, I'm kind of interested in your take on what sin is, that root of sin. What you heard what Helmut says. What do you think about that, and what's your take on that? Do you think there's truth to it?
I think he's got part of it as far as classical Christianity. There's a smidge of what the ancients believe there about. It kind of sounds like he's saying there's a loss of form there, but as far as how that's done, I think there's real problems with it on a theological level. I don't think it. So far from what I'm hearing, I don't think we can maintain any consistency with what the Bible says, and some things that are running into Mr. Felzmann's view here, such as overcoming evil with good and stuff like that. I mean, evil is a privation of the good, right? And I'm sure that's where we kind of agree a little bit on. But as far as how it's affected us and how far it's affected us, and that we just have to realize who we are, that's not the way that we can overcome that. It is by the blood of Christ and the power of the gospel, which is of first importance. The death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, which is of first importance. And that, I think, is what is the cure-all for sin. And sin on that aspect is definitely something that can make us a whisper of smoke, and make us lose our form to the degree that we are so formless that we are wailing and gnashing our teeth for all eternity.
Okay.
Because it's an effect that can take place and be continuous throughout eternity. So
okay, so one thing I want to ask you, Helmut, about, because we can kind of start to transition to the differences as to how we view what Christianity is. What was Jesus about? but there is kind of a disconnect that may get involved. So David is relying, he mentioned the Bible as a way of understanding what is it that Jesus really taught. Whereas on your end, there may be some disagreement there. So I'm kind of curious, what value do you place on the Bible as a means for knowing what Jesus said, what he did, what Christianity is about? And if you don't use the Bible, what do you use to kind of determine what the truth is on that front?
Well, the Bible is written by men, by spiritual men, and they have written their spiritual or their experiences with God, you could say, and it's a kind of awareness of people, but it's not a revelation of God. So God doesn't write books. So it's the awareness of people of that time with their education and with their view of God they had at this time. And for me, it is very important what Jesus himself said, his Sermon on the Mountain, his parables, and his life. And for me, the crucifixion, the whole passion story, the crucifixion, have a high meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because I think that he really overcame death at the cross and overcame sin, the way I understand it.
Okay.
On the cross. But not in a magical sense. And if you say, David, our salvation lies in the blood of Jesus, sorry, that's magical thinking. No.
I don't know if it's magical, but
it's
I think
my
it's
view
atoning.
about this. It's
Yeah.
magical thinking. What is magical thinking in my perspective? You give power to yourself on something, out of something that is external. That's magical thinking. So you depend. Your salvation depends on something external.
But isn't it magical thinking to think that we share the same essence as God? Like we're supernatural in essence? I think that's a problem too.
No, it's so my salvation comes from myself, a son of God, not from the ego. The two completely different things. So not from outside, just from inside, namely how God has created me.
So your salvation doesn't come from Christ.
We have to look very carefully. What is Christ? Yeah. So as I said, Christ for me, this word Christ. What does it mean? Okay. I'm sure we two have different meanings. So I think yes, Christ for me is a symbol for my godly essence and for your godly essence. As I have said, my healing, I like more the word healing than the word salvation. My healing comes from Christ, but in the sense that it is my holiness, but it's not my ego holiness, but it is the essence as what God has created us.
Okay, what is ego to you?
The ego is a concept, of course, for something. A concept are like maps. They are not the reality, but they help for certain things. So,
well, I mean, you say it comes from a concept, but you're acting like it's coming from an actual place. So you're using the ego like it's an actual thing, but then telling me it's not. It's kind of like Buddhism, where it tells me that I need to destroy the self, but I need the self to tell the self that it needs to be destroyed. It's totally contradictory,
no, this is.
and it's magical. It's thinking, if you
Yeah,
ask me.
no. This is a deviation of thinking. It's a weird thinking. We need not to destroy ourselves because we are ourselves. It is nonsense.
Yeah, but on Buddhism, there is no self. That's what I'm trying to relate to, because
Yes.
what you're telling me about the ego is that it's there and I'm using it, or it's in me, or it's innate in me, yet it's really not there. It's just a concept. So I mean, I'm really having problems with consistency here.
Okay. I have to explain it a little better. I hope
It's okay. I understand.
it's
There is a
it's
language
all
barrier here as well.
difficult. Yeah, we are not talking about trees or rivers, but about something which is not so easy to see. Yeah.
Mhm.
So the ego is something that in reality does not exist, of course. The ego exists through our faith in the ego. And you can say the ego is a kind of faith in separation. So, to overcome the ego is to overcome the faith in separation. So here it's me and there's God, here am I with my interests and my strengths and my career and my money, and here are you as an American. You have Trump and all kinds of funny things in my eyes, our eyes, the European eyes. And so this is as a personality, you could say, is this this faith in a separate identity, in a separate personality, which is important. So I'm not, as a healthy ego is good, but you need to be aware of it. So what does this mean? You need to be aware of it. An example, you need to be aware of it. Yeah, if you are aware of the ego, then it's not, so it is like thin air. So it's gone on this thing. So there are sometimes so these old Hollywood movies where there are a love story, but with many ego things in between, and at the end, then you have the reconciliation and everything is fine. So what has happened? The people have became aware of the egoistic thinking of that this is all not the real truth. Yeah. And what is the real truth? The real truth you find if this ego thinking, this thinking of separation, is transformed, is not given the reality it should not have. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so I think I get what you're saying there.
So I
Helmut.
need hold on, Dale, 1 second. So I need to recognize that the ego exists and overcome the ego and basically destroy the ego that's never there in the first place. So I need to recognize something that's not there to get rid of the something that's not there.
Yeah.
You see where I'm having issues?
Yeah.
Because I don't believe it exists. I don't believe the ego exists
I
at
can
all.
give you a very good example.
Okay.
Maybe you can understand it. What I mean. it's all is a way of consciousness, of seeing things. And we see things that we want to see. So let's see forgiveness. What is forgiveness? Forgiveness, in order to forgive, to have the need for forgiveness, there must be a judgment first. Yeah. If there is no condemnation, no judgment, that's a very central point also for Christianity. Because if you think about the cross, it goes about forgiveness, yeah, through the blood of Christ. So if you want, there's only a need for forgiveness if there is a judgment, a condemnation in the first place. And believe me, I have a big story, big experiences with the issue of forgiveness. When I found out what my parents did with me after my birth, you can imagine, I experienced it, I knew it when I was 48 years old. So tell me, but it was in the seminar. It is stored in the body. Such a trauma is stored in the body, in each cell. So, and I experienced myself in this infant home again, with 48 in the year when I was 48. And I went at home to my parents and asked them what has happened. And they told me. And then I know, and I could explain my life. So, and my mother, she said, I could make it differently, and why do you have a problem with it, and so on. So she was not so that she said, oh, if I would have known this, oh, I'm so sorry. No. I had no other choice, and little children get off it. So I bought how to say, a sack with sand for boxers in my cellar, and I pushed against this how do you say it, boxsack in German, against it for months, and it symbolized my mother. Yeah. How can you do this? You have no heart, you have no love, you have nothing. Yeah, and you didn't even tell me, and so on and so on. So we were able to reconcile for reconciliation shortly before she died. And what made this possible, and this is a miracle, was that I understood it. I understood her. She told me her life. It would be a long story, but I have. It was clear to me I have no reason for judgment. Yeah.
Okay.
And then that was it. Yeah.
Yep. So here's where I'm having a total issue, and this is kind of bringing it back to where we started this conversation, because I think we got off on some other trails here, and I want to kind of like bring it back, because I think it's important to examine the view in itself, because we started off about the Bible here, and you said that it was made by man, but it's not a revelation of God. But then you went and you said that we need to learn the revelations of Jesus. And if Jesus is God, then we have to understand that the Bible is a revelation of God, because the Sermon on the Mount is a revelation of God. And that's where I'm having a whole process, because the God that I know and serve, he can reveal himself in a book. He can. He wouldn't be much of a God if he couldn't reveal himself in a book. If he couldn't use the men that are part of his essence, in some way, to reveal those truths to us. Because in that sense, even though it's written by man, and they're still an essence of God, then that still would count as a revelation of God. So there's an inconsistency there, I see. And then it is like I said, you are using the ego as the Buddhists use the self. Okay. In a different way. And it just sounds like you want your cake and eat it too. Right. And I don't think that is. I do think there's the either or. I think if you step out in front of a bus and it's coming towards you, it's either you or the bus. It's not you and the bus. So you're going to get hit by the bus. Okay. Because I do think God does give us boundaries in reality, and he gives us a reality in which we exist. And you said something about your story, and I don't want to minimize your story because I think it's very important. And I think that you're a human being that went through this trial when it came to your mother, but your idea of reconciliation being a miracle, in the way that you see it, I think is very nuanced, because that's magical thinking in a way. Miracles are magical thinking. And the first miracle would have to have taken place, and that's the miracle of existence in itself, which would have been created by God at some point. And that is magical as well. That's supernatural as well. So I don't think you can escape the supernatural or what you're labeling as magical thinking and have a belief in God in the first place. So I do want to hand it to Dale, because I see his hands going up and this and that. I'm sorry, Dale. I know I've been kind of hogging the mic. Go for it, Dale.
So this is good, because I wanted to bring it back to the approach, because obviously you and Helmut have different views, and I wanted to kind of work out, but how do we tell whose is truth? So you kind of addressed, I got Helmut's view on, what's the role of the Bible in that, and I got your take. But David, just a quick follow up. Something Helmut mentioned is he's happy to take the words of Jesus, right? The sermon, the red letters in the Bible, and he'll use that. But the other stuff in the Bible, like the letters of Paul, that's just human being. It's not revelation according to him. What do you think of that approach?
Dale, I think I explained it. If humans are part of the essence of God, then they are by default revelations of God. Or maybe on his view, they could just be the ego part of our essence. But I think that flies in the face of the evidence, because I think we have good reason to see that the Bible is very harmonized. I don't think there's many problems with it. Now, yes, there are experiences, and we have to divide that up by genre, right? So we have to look at what type of message is the Bible saying. Is it a revelation from God? I think things like I want to say Malachi, and then Mark chapter 1, where it's talking about the announcement of Jesus. I think we look at those and we're like, wow, this guy lived hundreds of years ago, and Mark is describing exactly what's going on. These are events in history that are going on, and this guy prophesied over 400 years that this would happen. That could only be a revelation of God, and would be categorized as a miracle of some sort, which would be in that realm of supernatural revelation. So I think that we have to recognize that as well. And also, I don't think you can have your cake and eat it too on that side. Either the Bible is a revelation of God or it's not, because contained therein is the Old and the New Testament, which do harmonize to a degree that predicts the coming of Christ. And that's just my take on that. And I think I explained it well, that God wouldn't be much of a God if he couldn't reveal himself in a book.
Okay. All right, cool. So I have one last quick follow-up for Helmut then on this, and then I'll let you guys go back and forth for a little bit if you want on this issue, trying to figure out, well, whose interpretation is correct. But Helmut, the one thing, I know that you privilege experiences as a good source of gaining your knowledge for what you believe, and you reject the books because these are based on the ignorance, right? It's that ignorance that's writing that out. They're writing it as they understand it, but they're not getting it correctly. Now, one thing with experiences, what I want to ask you is, but our experiences and our understanding of our experiences are corrupted and fallible as well. We misunderstand that. So why should we privilege your experiences over the Bible if everything is contaminated by sin to some extent or something?
of course, it's like a science developing from error to error, but it's developing. Yeah. Anesthesis is good as long as it's not refuted. Yeah.
Okay.
The same it is also with our spiritual development, I think. Yeah. When I think what have I believed 30 years ago, 20 years, 10 years ago, even 1 month ago. Yeah. And Paul also wrote, when I was a child, I was a child. Yeah. And thought like a child. Yeah. And now I'm thinking differently. And I think that's the development of life, and it depends very much whether you want to have ears to hear and eyes to see, as Jesus said. If you have ears to hear and eyes to see and hear, yeah, and then God gives us, in this case, I say God, yeah, God gives us more light and more light to see reality, yeah. So yes, I had about 5, 6, 7 very exceptional experiences with God in my life. And I'm very humble and thankful, because it's always a grace. You can make it. You can make it. Yeah. But you can be open for it. Yeah. But even if you're open for it, it doesn't happen automatically. So God is not an object you can use for some things.
Okay.
But even if I remember these experiences, my view on these experiences is today a little different than it was when I had experienced it. It was in the 70s and in the 90s.
Gotcha. Okay, so I think there are two main, when I spoke to you last time, there were two main topics where we have differences that you wanted to speak about. So obviously, one is about, did Jesus actually die for our sins on the cross and that sort of thing. The other was the morality of hell. So I want to start with the morality of, judgment and hell, like, heaven versus hell. Let's start with that as a moral thing. So do you want to just take a few minutes to kind of describe why do you think heaven and hell and God, a righteous judge judging good versus bad, like, why do you find that to be immoral as a doctrine?
Well, I don't think that God judges.
Okay.
Because if God is real love, what I believe, real love does not judge. Gotcha. Therefore, God has no need to forgive. And this, the whole story is useless, as is not important. It's a story of forgiveness. God has not a problem with us. He has given us this freedom to lead a life without Him. This means without ourselves. Yeah, it's always unity. Yeah, so if we want to lead a life without ourselves, also that we are love and holy and all such things that really makes us, we can do it, and we will make our life in that way be based on separation, on sin, on evil, and so on. And I think that does God have emotions? God is not. God is outside of time.
Okay.
So if you think something, you can only do this in time, in a certain time. So when you say, okay, once I was lost, then I got born again, and now God loves me completely. No, God doesn't change his attitude, because if you want to change any attitude, you need time. You need to be a part of time, and God is outside of time. So love is also all what you can say about God is that he is. And I like negative theology. This sounds very negative, but negative theology, like of Meister Eckhart, is the belief that you cannot define God. Yes, you cannot define God. Positive theology can say, no, you can define. God consists of three persons. Yeah, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, and he has such and such characteristics and attitudes. Yeah, and you have big libraries with all kinds of theological books where you have definitions of God. So, and Master Eckhart says, if you want really to get to know God, which is to get to know yourself, get to know God, you must empty yourself from all concepts and images of God you have. If an eye should see, it has to be it has to be clear in itself. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it cannot see. So all images of God you have, you see the image of God, and you don't see God himself. You see just your image of God, and you need to be aware of this. Yeah. So God doesn't need to forgive, he just loves unconditionally. And we need to understand this. Mm-hmm. He loves even you and even me.
Yeah. That's true.
Isn't this unbelievable?
Yeah.
He loves us. Okay. Just like that. We don't even need to believe in Jesus.
Okay, so I'm going to bring in David Russell, and I'm going to give my own opinion on this one after David. But David, what? So basically, Helmut is saying, look, it's unloving for God to judge people and to separate them into heaven and hell. That just the act of judgment itself is an unloving thing. No, love should just be unconditional. There should be no condition on that. So, like, what would be your response on that front?
I would have to ask Helmut, what is love, without using loving language to define it, right? Because you can't use love to define love. We know that from the great philosophers like G.E. Moore and so forth. But this notion, see, this is where I'm having the biggest issue is we see this consistency, right? This inconsistency in Helmut's view, where he uses like things like that Jesus says, in the Sermon on the Mount and stuff like that. But the Sermon on the Mount is full of judgments. Okay, Helmut's using judgments to come to his conclusions. He's judging whether this is the right view or not. He's making a distinguishing mark between what is right and what is wrong, what is the correct view versus what is not the correct view, and that's a judgment call. Okay, look, I'm a father. I'm a father of 4, actually, and a father of about 4 fur babies as well. I love my dogs, but look, if I did not make a judgment, that if I didn't make a judgment on who my kids hung out with, I would be a bad father, because if I let them just hang out with drug dealers and stuff like that, that would have a bad effect on their life. So judgment is necessary to for a loving situation. God has to judge us based on several different things. Jesus judged the Pharisees. He also told us not to be hypocrites. Love is very judging. It takes good judgment for love to even be successful. So when he gets into things like you can't define God, I have a problem with that as well. Hold on, let me finish. 1 second. When you're talking about we can't define God in classic theology. There's these books. Jesus, you even said, Helmut, that if you see me, you've seen God. That's we can define God in that way, because if we've seen Jesus, we've seen God. Thus, we have a beautiful basis on which to define God, who is Jesus Christ. And I think that you, you use that verse, and that's where I'm seeing the inconsistency, is that you're using things like this, and it comes down to me is I can't ignore the Eastern thought that and philosophies that are going into your view, and I just think they fall short, in my opinion.
So,
Sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, David, I'm very, very sorry, but I have to make a judgment now.
How unloving.
I think that you are very much mind-oriented thinking. So for you, it's very important to have no contradictions. To have definitions and a system without contradictions and so on. And you want to grasp things with the mind. So you ask me, what is love for you? Yeah. So to me, it's like, tell me your concept about love, what my mind can understand. And I'm sorry, that's not possible. We can understand love, what love is, and what the real truth is, only with our heart and not with our mind. And this, we can talk a lot about many things, and perhaps a little bit goes down to the heart, a little bit. Perhaps it depends on openness, it depends on the spiritual path until now. Yeah, so much things is already almost ready in the subconscious mind. Yeah, so that it becomes clear. Okay, aha, a new idea. Okay, yes, and which brings us further. But as there's this novel, Der kleine Prinz, this, I think The Little Prince or something like this, Exupéry so ähnlich, who wrote it. But this little prince says, you can, the real truth you can only understand with your heart. So, concerning judgments, of course, on a daily level, on a level of our normal life, of course you need to judge. The question is, what is your orientation? On what basis do you judge? Yeah, out of a heart of love, or more out of an egoistic thinking? Yeah. So is it my advantage? What you are saying? Does it strengthen my position? Is it useful for me? Yeah, that's the more egoistic, and you make judges. Always. We judge always. Yeah. But what I mean is to make judges about what, for instance, a person is. You can judge and correct the behavior of your children. I have also two children. Right? So, and a dog also, yes. So I can say, okay, Katja, what you did, I think was not right. Yeah? But what I should not say is, Katja, you are not right. Yeah? But I say is, Katja, I love you. And I take you as you are. If you say no, it was right, and I say, okay, it's up to you. It's your freedom. It's your responsibility. Okay, she is almost 40 years old. Yes, she's an adult. Yeah, but so as parents, we are like lighthouses. Yeah, like a lighthouse. When the children are older. Yeah? So we stand and send light. Yeah, so you can always come to me, and I give you always support as much as I can, and so on. Yeah. So what the Bible says is that God judges us existentially. And if you are talking about heaven and hell, we can of course talk about what is this, what is hell, what is heaven. I personally think that heaven and hell is more a kind of state of consciousness. Yeah. So, and people who living as sinners, sin means to miss a target. Yeah, that's the Greek word for sin. So you have a thing, and you miss the target, so you sin. If you do this, you live beneath, also you live not yourself, yeah, but an illusion of yourself, and you what you think is real. And so the Holy Spirit cannot show you anything, because the Holy Spirit is not compulsory. He respects our freedom. Yeah? We have a very deep freedom. Otherwise, love would not be possible if we would not have this deep existential freedom. What I want to say is, yeah, hell as a state of consciousness. Yes, we create our own hell. That's, as a sin has punishment enough. God doesn't need to punish us extra. But I think that love always exists. So that's my personal view. That real love says never closed. So the door to heaven is always open. If not in this life, maybe in another life, maybe in eternity. But if one doesn't want, he can live in, can be in hell for eternity. Whatever. But it's not up to me to know this. I just trust. This is a light I get, and I don't want to write a Bible and say, okay, that's the absolute truth. It's just my experience.
So I was listening closely to what you were saying, and I think I'm heartened, because I think that if you have a proper understanding of what God's judgment is, I think you would agree that God is loving by judging us in the same way David is as a loving parent judging his children. Now, it comes down to, what does the Bible teach? And I don't think the Bible does teach that, oh, you are just in essence bad. No, that would make God a liar. In essence, they are image bearers of God. That's always good. But he is judging their sins, for their sins that they've committed. And he has to do that because through that punishment of hell, he's accomplishing two beneficial goals. One, punishment helps to reform the character of the sinner, right? If they go through their punishment, they realize they're wrong, they can be reformed. So that's the goal of punishment. The second is quarantine. You're protecting those who have been redeemed and separating out, because a sinner, if you put them in the midst, sin spreads, right? If I punch you in the face, you're going to want to punch me back and yell at me or something like that. You're going to want to sin back, right? So God has to quarantine, and that's what hell is. It's a quarantine zone. Now, the other question, and this will be the last thing I say, you mentioned, but then why is it eternal? Like, shouldn't it be finite and stop, and then they go to heaven? Well, the reason I think it's eternal, and the Bible isn't clear on this either way, right? But it's because, unfortunately, those people in hell keep sinning. They keep doing sins for all of eternity, and they keep having to incur more and more punishments in order to get those benefits. But it's just the case they never get there because they freely choose to keep sinning. So that, if that's correct, would that help solve to some degree your moral issue?
Well, forgive me, but what, my opinion, I'm just, I say it's just out what I think is. Uh, what you said is a pure projection of the ego onto God.
Okay.
That's the way how the ego thinks. So the ego thinks, okay, this bad things you have done to me. You have insulted me. So you disrespected me. Yeah? What the ego is this? Yeah? That's real ego. Yeah? You have disrespected me. I will show you how I am. I will punish you until eternity. So this image of God is a real human image of God. Yeah, and had in my eyes nothing to do with the real God. The real God is first of all in a light no one can come to, so we cannot really understand him. But it's light, yeah, and it's pure love. And he has no problems with sin, because sin. I want to say this
Sin is amazing.
in the eyes of love, of real love, sin is relative. It's not an object, an absolute thing. Yeah.
Okay. Because that doesn't. Because
I just it does it to me, and Dale, like because what you're saying to me is really relative here, because this whole notion of the ego that doesn't exist yet we can project it, is just it doesn't make sense, because at the end of the day you can't define the ego. The ego doesn't exist, it's not there, yet we're able to harness this ego, and we can't define God, because there's the love that we experience is only a matter of the heart. It's just it just seems to be all over the place there, which seems to me relative in that position there. And at the end of the day, I have a man that came, that a God that came into the form of a man, who is Jesus, and tells me exactly, how to live, how to love. He tells me what love is. No greater love is this, and you lay down your life for a friend, and so forth, and gives me the ability to show the fruits of love by um, giving his Holy Spirit to me. So I just really think that there's a consistency in our classical view of Christianity, versus this one, which to me it just doesn't seem that there's any parameters in which this actually works. And there's several aspects that I agree on with you about freedom, and that freedom is a necessary part of love. But I need the head to inform my heart. That's what it comes down to. I need the head to inform my heart. So without it, I think that we lack consistency. But go ahead, Dale. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I was just out of fairness. I was going to kind of challenge you a bit, but I think you kind of answered it, because I was going to say, well, Helmut saying, look, I get you and Dale are logical. You need everything to make sense. But he was kind of saying, well, that is irrelevant. Logical contradictions are irrelevant. They don't dictate terms. So I was going to ask you, like, well, why does the system need to be consistent with logic and stuff like that?
Because there's bounds of reality, and if we want, God gives us a system in which this reality exists, and for this reality exists, even our freedom has to have boundaries, and you can't avoid the consistency with it, because even Helmut even says people have to take responsibility for things, which denotes boundaries and reality in reality. So that has to exist, and with that, I think that God gives us the head to inform the heart, and thus we have a system that is here, and like I said before, in this reality, it's either you or the bus. You're not going to walk out in front of a bus and get the choice to stand there and say me and the bus. It's coming towards you. It's going to hit you whether you want it to or not. And there are certain objective bounds in this reality. And to deny it is to live inconsistent with it.
Okay, gotcha. And I see Helmut, I'll let you get the last word on that. After you get that, I do want to transition to that issue of Jesus' crucifixion and shroud and stuff. So yeah, go ahead and respond to what David said, and then we'll transition.
Well, I understand, David, that what I say must confuse you. Yeah. But our mind, which has much to do with our ego, never can understand God and love. Yeah. So, and if you think you can understand God and love, you believe in consistent concepts. Yes. And I'm sorry that I cannot. How should I say?
Relate.
Understanding is whether we understand something or not is always depending of our condition of consciousness. As Jesus says, who has ears to hear should hear, and who has eyes to see should see. So I would like to go shortly to the Shroud of Turin, because the Shroud of Turin is a perfect example for this problem.
Gotcha. Yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to...
I'll bring it up for you.
Okay, I go präsentieren, Bildschirm teilen.
Yeah, it was up there, but then you took it down.
You see it already, so do you see it?
No, you took it down. So I think you have to go through it again and bring it back up.
Okay. So what?
Present.
Yes.
Share screen. You remember, yeah.
Yes, teilen. Okay. So now you see me.
There it is. Yep.
I go to this slides.
Yep, I'm seeing it.
You see it. Okay, so I start the picture, the presentation. Okay, so life or death on the Turin Shroud. We see what we want to see. So Christians have the hypothesis the man on the shroud was dead, of course. What else? And the shroud is a proof of Christ's resurrection. You can have this view, of course. So Sturb has spent 150,000 working hours with a break goal. How was the image formed? And what was the result? We don't know. It is a real image of a scorched and crucified person, but how the image was formed, we don't really know, even not after 150,000 working hours. So there are some very specific peculiars of this image. So one of these peculiars, I think you both know it, is the 3D effect. So I think most of the shroud researchers agree that some energy must have come out from the body. Otherwise, the high resolution cannot be explained. But we have the problem on the basis of a scientific, naturalistic worldview, no energy can come out of a corpse. I think that's clear science. So now the argumentation is, as we don't find any natural solution for the image, we should be open for a supernatural explanation. And so the image could have been created by an extremely short flash of energy during the resurrection. Like Paolo Di Lazzaro, he's also a member of the short science group. I had an email exchange with him also. He has tried to use laser beams and at certain things, but he cannot explain a lot of things. So the result, the Shroud of Turin, is a mystery and could be a witness to the resurrection. That's the perspective you have if you assume a dead person. So if we assume a living person, I know it must be horrible for some Christians, but let's have this assumption and see what comes out. How can we explain things then? So I think that Ray Rogers, he was very, very close to the results to find out. But he died too early in 2005, I think. So what he has found out, the image is a thin layer around the image fibers, nothing synced. So you see it's this bright yellow thing, that's the image substance. The image layer dissolves in a strong solvent, so it's a layer of a certain substance, chemical, which you could say. And Roger proposed a chemical process at room temperature that took a while. So he said that if radiation is involved, wavelengths cannot be shorter than the color green. It's in this book, Chemist's Perspective on the Shroud of Turin. Otherwise, additional damages are to be expected. So the fibers must have been damaged inside of them, and they have counted these damages because there's radiation in the air always a little bit, and so this brings also damage to the fibers. But the fibers of the image fibers had not more defects than the other fibers, so he concluded that the image cannot be caused by too energetic waves because then the fibers in them must have been also damaged. So what he proposed is a chemical process at room temperature, a mild reaction, amines from the dead body, he believed in a dead person, plus starch, saccharides on the cloth. The question is, can a chemical process alone cause the high resolution of the image? So he spoke of gas concentration differences. So the farther away from the body, the less concentration of the gases, and therefore the less image substance has been formed. And I asked him shortly before his death, he was also a part of this email group, do you really think that gas differences alone can cause such a high resolution of the image? Because the space between the body and the cloth is not very much, and so the gas concentrations must have been very similar along the way, so we would only expect a big stain, but not an image. And he agreed, yes, you are right, it's not possible that way, there must be something else. So what is this something else? The suggestion control of the process by body heat could explain the high resolution of the image. It was first Rodney Hoare who suggested this in his book already in 1984, A Piece of Cloth. Rodney Hoare was head of the British Shroud Society at that time. And he wrote the story in his book. He said he went to a group of forensic scientists with big photos of the shroud, and he wanted to get explained the death cause. And these forensic scientists, after discussing a lot among themselves, they said, sorry, the man could not have been dead. So because of various reasons. So this was a surprise for him, of course. And so he writes also in this book this mechanism that the warm body projects a kind of heat image on the shroud. I have made experiences by myself. I took a rubber glove filled with hot water, and I laid a piece of cloth on this rubber glove and made instantly a photo with a thermosensitive camera. That's the middle image, and so it looks very much like the image of the hands with the fingers on the shroud. So, okay, if you have a living person, maybe you are closer to an explanation for how the image was formed. But the question is, are there real signs that this man under the shroud was dead? So there must be other signs, not just the image. So Miguel Lorente, he is a forensic pathologist, a Spanish. He says there are many signs of life on the clothes, but none of death. And there is also in the internet a paper from him where he explained issue by issue why he came to this conclusion. Let's take one thing, rigor. So on the left side, you see the proper position on the cross in the state of unconsciousness or death. So the body must have turned to one side, yes. And so I think most shroud researchers agree also that rigor must have evolved almost completely before the body was brought to the tomb. On the right side, we see a plastic of this man of the shroud. It was an exhibition, and but I think it's wrong. So the figure in the middle explains it better. He was stretched out because when we look on the shroud itself, you can see the legs almost completely. You see it in the image on the low part of the slide. So that means that the legs must be stretched out, and otherwise there would be a too great distance between the knees, for instance, and the lower part of the cloth, and we see images only up to 5 centimeter distance from the cloth. So the image on the shroud does not reflect the frozen position on the cross. And the other thing is that the body, the head was not just hanging in the air, but it was on a pillow, on a soft pillow, because otherwise we would not see so much of the back of the head. So now we come to the blood stains. On the left side, we see the blood streams on the arm. We see 3 blood streams, 1, 2, and 3. 1 and 2 have been formed on the cross. So Zuckerby has made experiment on this, and he confirmed it. So the degree, the angle is matches, and with the position on the cross. And blood stain 3 was formed, that is guessed, in the tomb. So 1 and 2 on the cross. There is the idea that so there must be 2 positions. with different angles. And so the idea that the person, as long as he was conscious, had two positions on the cross in order to get air. And therefore, these two bloodstains is not correct. Zuckerby made experiments. There would be smeared. So there would not two distinct bloodstains. So there must be one time when the person was in one position, and then another about the same time length when the person was on the other position. And we see bloodstain 1 is long and narrow. So that means that the person probably did not move very much or not. And bloodstain 2 is broad, yes, and irregular, so there must have been movement. So, okay, so we can say, yes, the one was when he was conscious, Blutbahn 2, and the other was when he was in this, so went to the side and was in the other position. But when he was dead, bloodstain 1 cannot evolve because a corpse would not bleed any longer, especially not on this position, because the hand was on the highest position of the cross. So it is simply not possible to have two bloodstains when he was dead. So this is a big suggestion that he was just conscious when he was on the cross and not dead. So the next is the blood on the back from the spear wound. So I have marked it a little bit, so we can see that the blood went from this spear wound on one side along the whole back by capillary effect to the other side. So this means that the body must have bleeded considerably for a considerable amount of time. This process must have taken time. This capillary effect needs time. And the next are the bloodstains on the nail wounds of the feet. There was so the blood went down the sole of the feet and soaked through 3 layers of clothes. So which is not very likely if there was no heart pressure, blood pressure. So Professor Bonti, he was head of the forensic department of the University of Düsseldorf and also president of the World Association of Forensic Pathologists. He got images, large enlargements of the shroud, and the person who sent him these images didn't say at first that it was from the shroud, and he just asked him whether he thinks that the person was dead or not. And later, he in a second round, Karl Herbst told him that it was from the shroud, and he gave him also a paper from Professor Bologna, who Italian forensic pathologist, who said you can explain this even if it's a corpse. So, but he stayed at his opinion and says, in my opinion, everything indicates that the circulatory effect had not yet ceased, and I cannot imagine that large quantities of blood could have occurred in this betting because there are no smears on the shroud. So the body was not transported in the cloth. This could have made the body bleeding by pressures, but that's not the case. At first, the cloth was put on the floor, and one half, and then the body was laid on it, and then the other part was laid over the body. And in this case, it is not explainable that the body was dead. So one piece of cloth, many possible interpretations. It made, for me, so I wrote 2 books, No Death for Jesus, with all the images and in-depth going explanations, and also a novel, about the memoirs of Judas Iscariot. So for me, it was clear that he was believed death, but that he was not dead by the standards of the 21st centuries. So how can I?
Looks like you've stopped sharing already.
So stop sharing. Yes.
You're back.
That would be the easiest for me.
Okay. So we do have a question from the audience, from Jamie Russell. He's no relation to Mr. Russell up there, but is Helmut saying that if Jesus was dead when he was stabbed on the cross, there wouldn't be blood flow to get on the shroud?
Jesus was dead when
if Jesus was
dead. And not in this manner. Of course, corpses are bleeding by gravity of larger wounds on the lower side, but the stab wound was on the highest point of the body. The body was lying on the back, and and there's no pressure from outside that could if a lot of blood was on one place in the corpse. You have pressure from outside, it can come out, but all these cases are not plausible. Yes. So I think, yes, there could be a little post-mortem blood, yes, of course, but not the way we see it. That's
Gotcha.
also what forensic scientists say.
Okay, so I just have one follow-up question on mine, and then I'll turn it to David Russell for his take on this before we close out. But so you mentioned a couple of medical experts who say that they think Jesus just swooned on the cross. Are you seeing the slide there?
Yes.
So this is from a peer-reviewed medical journal, and it's kind of a meta paper, right? So it's looked at all the medical experts who've published papers on Jesus' crucifixion, and the vast majority here, you can see there's only 3 in the peer reviewed who've entertained the possibility that of the swoon theory. Everyone else says no, it's impossible. He would have been dead on the cross. So I'm just kind of curious, like how do you reconcile that if Jesus was put up on the cross? The vast scholarly consensus would be that he's dead. So even if the shroud hypothetically, for the sake of argument, shows someone who was alive, just for the sake of argument, that would be a contradiction, right? Like, wouldn't you have to say the shroud didn't cover Jesus then? Or like, how would you respond to this consensus argument?
Well, every person has his view, and his view is determined a lot of his basic beliefs. And so I think it is, when I think, for instance, of Zuckerby, you have it on the list. Mr. Zuckerby, he was...
you want the list? I can bring it back up. Sorry.
Can you... So Mr. Zuckerby, he was, I think he was a forensic scientist who probably spent the most hours on the shroud, and he wrote also a book about the shroud, the Crucifixion of Christ. I have it here in my bookshelf also, of course. And he was also a member of the shroud science group. And I asked him whether he was ready to discuss with me the things I have just shown. And he said, no, I will not deal with such a nonsense. And he proclaimed himself, he said, I am a soldier of Christ. And this is the main problem, because for a Christian, this issue is not a neutral issue. And so if you want to perform real ethical science, you need to have a neutrality towards the outcome of your work. And many of those researchers, also especially forensic scientists, they have it on the, I think that's my, but I have got acquainted with one person, also Zuckerby. They have it on their agenda to bring it to the world that the shroud of Turin is the real shroud of Jesus. Yeah, we agree, that's clear. But that it's also proof that, of course, he was dead, and perhaps even a proof for the resurrection. So this is the conflict. This is the conflict. And many of those forensic papers you just explained are from a time where the matter of life and death was not that issue as it is today. Until, let's say, 20 or 10 years ago, no, 20 years ago, it was not a question at all in the public. It is only gradually a question, because it's so unbelievable that somebody survives such a torture. That's clear. I agree with it. It is really unbelievable. But I think, also for me, it is a sign of a power of life in Jesus.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. So
he had a love and a power of life which not many people have, perhaps not one other person. There are, maybe you have also seen some videos, interviews with people who have had near-death experiences. And so sometimes some of them, they say, okay, I was outside of my body, I saw my body from above and so on, and then I saw relatives that wanted to welcome me, but there was a kind of fence between us, a border, and I wanted to go on the other side, but there was somehow a voice or whatever who said, no, you have something to fulfill in your life. And so they decided to stay alive. And I imagine, yeah, we cannot know this, but I imagine that something like this also happened with Jesus. He knew that he had a mission to fulfill, and it was not accomplished with the crucifixion, not at all.
Gotcha. All right.
If he would not have come back, I think we would not have a Christianity today. His disciples have seen the Messiah or whatever, their leader die under such worse situation. Yeah, the crucifixion was made by the Romans to humiliate the leaders who did made actions against the Roman power. Yeah? So they saw all this horrible thing, and I think they would have been disappointed and sad and so, and went back to go fishing again or whatever. Yeah, they said, okay, sorry, he died. It's we don't understand it. Yeah. But this did not happen. Jesus came again and said, "Here, it's me." Yeah. And Paul, who never has seen Jesus personally, as on a physical basis, he made out this salvation story. Sorry, folks, but I have no other idea. Yeah. And I can also, I've thought about it. Why Paul said, okay, it's my gospel. Jesus has told it to me directly in a vision, whatever. And if one explains you, gives you another gospel than what I did give you, Galatians, he should be cursed. So the gospel we have today is primarily a Pauline gospel. And I think it came as Saul was a Pharisee at first, and he persecuted the Christians. He was a Pharisee and a theologian, you can say, with a very well education. And the question was, what is the meaning of the crucifixion and the resurrection? And I think that's what I guess that Saul or Paul, later Paul, thought, okay, all men are sinners, that's clear, that's written in the Bible, in the Old Testament, and you need a sacrifice, you need the blood of animals in order that the sin is forgiven by God. So this was what you say, the business model of the religious leaders at that time. Yeah, the temple business. Yeah, which Jesus hated. He went to the Temple Mount and he turned off the tables of the animal sellers and money exchanges. So I think this was the primary reason why he had to disappear, because he questions the business model of the religious network, of the religious leader. So he questions their power. So and Paul, I think he has thought, how can I reconcile this? And then suddenly he had this idea. Jesus is the sacrifice. That's it. That must it be. So the Old Testament is still somehow valid, but now we need no sacrifices anymore, because of course we have one sufficient sacrifice for all time, and that is Jesus, the Son of God. So and that's the birth of this religion.
All right, awesome. So so just for the audience, in terms of the shroud question, I have done a previous show with Helmut, and I've posted up links to the paper that he's citing here to argue that the Shroud Man was alive, and I've posted counter papers from medical experts on the other side of that. So yeah, take a look at those. But David, I want to bring you in because even outside of the Shroud, Helmut mentioned a lot of things about Paul inventing certain aspects of the Christian faith. So like, what do you have to respond to what Helmut was saying there?
Well, I have a big problem with it when it comes to that historically. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 is probably even pre-Pauline, and so is the Carmen Christi, which describe what's of first importance, that Jesus was dead and buried and came back. Not only that, but his gospel, we know, was confirmed by Peter, and Paul was actually in the Council of Jerusalem there historically. So we got that as well. I just don't see any historical basis for Helmut's position here. It's based off of more conjecture than actual history, because the history says quite the opposite. And we know from people like Ignatius and Polycarp, we know the gospel from them as well, who were actual direct disciples, and they don't contradict Paul either, and either does our first century apostles that we know of. So with that, I don't know how relevant this was to the previous conversation of not knowing. I know there's an agnosticism here, but we're doing to argue that an event took place is the point. Something did cause the shroud images. The objective process is still relevant here, because the science you're employing produces consistent thoughts that get you to a true conclusion. And I wanted to, when it comes to this being a good example of the previous conversation, I think there's a major problem here, because not knowing something doesn't make it unknowable. Just because you may not understand God doesn't mean he can't be understood. To claim you can't know him or understand him, I think is unknowable, but or is an unknowable claim, right? But I don't think that can stand when it comes to the shroud, because at some point it was known whether the shroud was the shroud of Christ or whether it's a fake. So the person that either created the shroud knew it was a fake, or the disciples that wrapped him in that shroud knew it was the real deal. So we have issues when it comes to the previous conversation that it can't be known, because it has been known at some point. So I think that flies in the face of that theory. But yeah, to the other historical claims and stuff like that, I think that we have a plethora of evidence, and embarrassment of riches when it comes to the New Testament as being accurate and reliable. And the fact that the Gospel's Pauline, I don't think so. Yes, we get some claims in Galatians, but that's after Paul is a disciple and has visited Peter and visited John and visited the 12 and so forth in Jerusalem, and has been confirmed. Even Peter says that what Paul preaches is scripture. So we have that as well. So if you're going to take in a traditionalist standpoint, I think you've got arsenal of evidence in your favor when it comes to that theory, Dale. So that's where I'll leave it. I'll let you direct the next part here.
Yeah, no.
Can I say a few words?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I'll give you the last word.
If we look at the history, and not just the Bible, but the church father writings and other historical sources, but even in the Bible, in 2 Corinthians, for instance, there was not so much harmony between Paul and the other apostles, because so they had this council in Jerusalem, and it was difficult. Yeah. So so they decided that Paul should preach the heathens and more in the West, and Peter and the others among the Jews and more in the East. So when we see at the writings of the church fathers, we see that these original disciples, which were later called also Ebionites, they were how do you say inflexible, denying some teachings of Paul, like this salvation theology by the sacrificial death of Jesus. And if we go in Acts for instance, they said, okay, to the High Court, you have crucified Jesus, but God has resurrected him. So the power of God is greater than yours, but not the sacrifice. When we see the history, we can understand that the Pauline Christianity was the winner, and not the Christianity of the original disciples who were Jews.
I absolutely, I absolutely disagree with that.
Just let me continue.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm not ready. Okay, because we had this war, and in 70, Jerusalem was destroyed, and this original church was almost no more. And then in the councils, like Nicaea, the religion was defined, and all those who believe something different have been heretics then. And the Ebionites have been forbidden in the 4th or 5th century. And all the Jewish Christians had to convert, to deny the Jewish confession. And many went into the desert. And so there's this story that Mohammed has met some of these original Christian sects, and because in the East there was always the question, God is one, God is one, and not three persons. This was always a conflict with the confessions in the East. And if you look at the Islam, God is one. So, but that's a little note. So there was not so much harmony between the Jewish Christians, the original disciples who have been established, the apostles who have been established by Jesus himself, and this newbie apostle who claimed to be an apostle because of visions he said he had of Jesus. So he had a problem with authority. He was not really considered as equal. You can see this in 2 Corinthians, for instance, where he is almost weeping about the super apostles, where he has suffered so much for the faith and so on. I think that Paul has written a lot of very good things. 1 Corinthians 13 about love, excellent. And I think without Paul, we would not have a church today. He was very, very important that the Christian church exists today. Yes, but if we look whether what he taught was really what Jesus taught and meant, we see a difference. I even think it was more or less the opposite of what Jesus' intention was.
Yeah, I would totally disagree on the historical aspect. We see tons of different things, not only biblically, but and we can't disregard that as history. We can't just separate the two. We have to look at them all in unison. And we see a lot more agreement, especially on the specifics. And the hard thing with the Jerusalem Council was the Gentile inclusion. We know that, but not on anything that had to do with his life, burial, and resurrection and sacrifice. We see all those that run consistently throughout the early church fathers. And one of our earliest extra biblical documents, the Didache, also is in full agreement with those fundamentals that we would say are fundamentals of the faith, which involve Jesus's death, burial, resurrection, and crucifixion, and the nature of the sacrifice, the atoning sacrifice. Then you have, I would agree that Christianity wasn't uniform, but there was a unity, and one of the biggest, the stickler for all the early church was the nature of Jesus Christ, who they claim to be God. And that
This
is
was
it.
formed. There was a lot of quarrel about this, and it took several councils until this Trinity God came out, and a lot of money was involved in this. And in one council, even with the bishops have been forced with weapons. This was a council which was annihilated later. So it was not so that the Holy Spirit took care of all these things. It was a very human thing.
Well, I mean, you do see, but Helmut, you do see the early apologies, the literature coming out of the times, not just the councils where they decided things, but you see the literature, you see the early apologists defending the deity of Christ all throughout the 1st and 2nd century. The ones that really stand out, like Justin Martyr, and you have Ignatius, they all defended the deity of Christ. That was a major sticking point. And regardless if some of the heresies overtook some of these people, the consistency was, even in those councils, was that Jesus was God. So that was a big deal. Muslims came 600 and some years later. They had even notions of Christianity in the Quran, and stuff like that, ideas that were evolved to Christian ideas that you can see, that you can trace historically. And, this is my field. This is where I study is major church history. That's where my degree is in philosophy and apologetics. So, and theology. So I really took a lot of time to study those things in history, and I just don't see the disconnect there that you're having. I do see there's a lot of information we need to process, but I think there's a complete harmony when you look at these early writings and you go back to the primary sources, and you can see this consistency that reigns clear. And I'm not going to say, I know a lot of people will say there's several cardinal things that we all agree on. No, I would limit it to just five things that we all have in common, that all Christianity has in common in those early years. And that's where I think we'd probably disagree on the most. But I'll hand it back. Hand it back to Bill.
We disagree.
Yeah, that's fine.
It doesn't matter. For me, it doesn't matter. For me, it doesn't matter.
Fair enough. Well, yeah, I think we kind of covered all the main topics, starting with, what is the concept of God just in general, and coming all the way down to the differences we have on, what is Christianity, or what did Jesus teach, and how does that relate to Christianity? So, yeah, I just want to say thank you so much to both David and Helmut for coming on. I hope you guys, I know you wanted to, go after each other at times there, but I think you had a great conversation, a great back and forth. So.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, Helmut. It really has, and I enjoy these type of conversations, and thank you for participating, and, you've been gracious and very loving.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the invitation. You know my critical spirit, you know it, and I think it was not perfect what I said, but I did the best I could. Yes.
Yeah, I do want to say thank you, especially thank you to you, Helmut, because again, it's kind of not fair. You do have that language barrier, but still, I think you did really well despite that. But,
thank you.
And
I love German beer.
Yes, I love it too. It's waiting downstairs.
I actually make wine, so I love wine as well, and I love your the German wine too.
Yes.
Especially Riesling. I do have a affinity for some Riesling. So
I'm just gonna say, Daniel, you may have just shown up, but you are perfect timing to be mentioned in the stream. So there you go. You got something. So, but yeah, thank you guys so much. And I guess for the next show on Real Seekers, I don't know what it's going to be. David, I'm going to be on your show tonight at 7:00. I'm assuming. What is going on for that? What do you have planned?
I don't have anything planned. This is Cosmic Corner. This is
Oh,
Josh's. I might show up for a little bit, but I probably won't be staying long on his show. Just depends on what he needs and stuff like that. A lot of times he has a bunch of guests on and has a whole thing planned out. So I don't want to step on his shoes.
okay, so never mind. So I guess I won't be on. Josh hasn't invited me, so I won't be on Cosmic Corner. But so in that case, the next show that I'm going to have for Real Seekers is actually going to be next Friday, and it will be Shroud related. I'm bringing together my friend, and I think Helmut knew Barry Schwartz as well. Unfortunately, he passed away a few weeks ago on June 21st. So I've brought a bunch of Shroud experts together to kind of just celebrate Barry's life and what they meant. It's something like 15 Shroud scholars and stuff like that. Helmut, well, you're here. It's totally up to you. I'm not putting you on the spot, but just while I have you here, is there anything you would like to say about Barry just to honor his memory, or do you prefer to keep that private?
Yes, I have met Barry personally in Rome. It was a dinner for us two in Rome. And I remember it was about 10 years ago. And I remember it was such a nice evening. And he was such a heartful person. And he even accepted me with my view. He never said to me what he thinks about this issue. No? But he was such a good guy, and he always wanted to be helpful, and without his personal agenda. So that every person has a say, and this shroud.com is a perfect place for all kinds of papers and information. And I worked with him a little bit because I helped him financially to go to Arizona and to make photos from the remaining samples. And I had the hope that because I knew that the small Arizona sample is still existing, it wasn't used. So I thought, okay, there's something special, something peculiar with this sample, because there are photos that should be, said it is this second sample. But if this is true, it doesn't match to anything. So it would be a proof that something bad happened here. But he went there in order to make the photo, and he was said, unfortunately, we have no access at present. Yeah. He said, okay, just can you make a photo of it and send it to me? He never got it. So but it was unfortunate. But he made photos of the other samples, and for me it was interesting to see it. So he was always helpful. Absolutely. And it was not for him to get rich of this work, and I think he didn't get it. It was on his heart to make this work as a Jew. Yeah, so he had a certain neutrality also in this. It is a pity that he has gone, but that's our human life. Yeah, it has an end. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we see him again.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah. Anything. Absolutely.
I think we will have a lot to talk.
Excellent. Well, very well said. Thank you so much for that, Helmut. And with that said, God bless everyone, and take care.
Yeah, thank you. Goodbye.
All right. Press the red button there.